The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies is scheduled to meet today with South Africa's mobile network operators. The session forms part of Parliament's constitutional oversight responsibilities. During the meeting, telecom companies are expected to update the committee on the progress in addressing key public concerns, including efforts to lower data cost and improve network connectivity in rural areas. For more on this, we are now joined by the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Khusela Diko. Khusela, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. So looking at the 2019 report by the Competition Commission already saying that but from their findings that the data costs in South Africa are anti-poor. What do we expect to hear from the network providers today, and will you be bringing up this matter of the Competition Commission?
Good morning, Aldrin. Good morning to your viewers. Thank you so much for inviting us on the show. Maybe if you could just allow me to start off by sending my most sincere condolences to the families and loved ones of those who have perished in the Eastern Cape. I mean, I too am a daughter of that region, so I can really, my heart really goes out to them. Aldrin, this discussion today actually speaks to, I was reminded listening to the Premier just a minute ago, of the importance of connectivity in our areas, in our rural areas in particular, because connectivity is a critical enabler of economic development and all endeavors of life. Now, whether you have lines running through a village or you don't, if you can't afford to use them, that then means that that connectivity is meaningless. And these are the issues that we want to raise with the mobile network operators. Indeed, the issue of data costs will be at the center of the discussion, I think, because whenever you speak to anybody in this country, they speak to the fact that our data costs are amongst the highest on the African continent and obviously globally. The report of the Competition Commission did yield some results in terms of the data prices coming down. I expect the network operators to try and hide behind that, but it doesn't mean that those costs at this point in time are comparable elsewhere in the world. But similarly, I think one issue that has also come up is this issue of expiry of data bundles. Why do they expire? Because at the end of the day, South Africans would have paid for those data. But we are going to, Aldrin, really concentrate on this issue I was talking about of access in the most underserved areas. How do we expand the fiber network? We have issues of schools that are not connected in this day and age. And these are issues that we've been raising with government. And every time we've spoken to government, they have then said, it is the responsibility of the network operators, and hence we thought it was important to invite them to Parliament.
Yeah, and let's go back to the example of the Eastern Cape, and considering how vastly spaced it is, that particular province. Earlier on, we were speaking about the Premier, for instance, lamenting that you only have one helicopter for the entire province. But when it comes to connectivity, also the issue then becomes the infrastructure and whether you do have enough infrastructure that we're able to connect people in rural areas where you do not necessarily find a lot of individuals living in that particular area, and whether or not it would make commercial sense for network providers to ensure that they are able to provide network to those areas or coverage to those areas.
You know, Aldrin, we're going to get to a point very soon, I think, where we're going to have to agree as a country that connectivity is a human right. I remember when we did an oversight visit in October of last year in that area, OR Tambo District Municipality. In one of the meetings, one of the community members stood up and said that they blame the network for the death of, I think it was 11 people in Lusikisiki. And we had no idea, what does the network have to do with the death of people? And they said, when that massacre was happening in Lusikisiki, they did not have phones to call the ambulance to come quick enough. Whether it's one helicopter or not, somebody still needs to call it. They could not reach out to the police in time. So we do believe, honestly, that connectivity is beginning to be a human right. Now, when it comes to issues of infrastructure and the unwillingness or reluctance of these mobile network operators to get to that, government has said to them, let's attach it to the things that you do want, because clearly you believe that there's no commercial incentive for you. Hence, when they got the spectrum allocated to them, they were given conditions. They have to connect up to 21,000 public service sites across the country. These are the schools, the hospitals, the clinics, and so forth. So we are going to be asking how far they are with that. But you see, Eldrin, we have a problem in this country where there is just a refusal of joint planning collaboration. Just this week, we met with Sanral, Eskom, Prasa. All of these state-owned companies have got serious fiber assets that if you allowed Broadband Infraco, which is the state digital infrastructure company, to tap into those assets, we wouldn't have to spend the amount of money that we don't have trying to expand a broadband network. So as a committee, what we're trying to do is really foster a collaborative approach between government, between the private sector, ultimately to realize that which they've already committed themselves to in terms of the NDP goal of universal connectivity.
Yeah. What about the technology in that space? And here I'm going to bring up the conversation around Starlink, because the argument has been that you have the low Earth orbit satellite providers that would be able to provide coverage to people in rural areas, that maybe that is the route that the country should be taking.
Yeah, it's not either or. Currently, we do have, for example, the likes of Centec, which does use satellite. Yes, it's geo satellite in their case, but they do use satellite to augment where we don't have capacity, especially in the rural areas, given the topography of some of these areas. We have absolutely no problem. In fact, we encourage the entry of low Earth orbit satellites as part of the mix. I don't think you can do away totally with fiber. We know that a number of the MNOs are testing particular technologies, and we're waiting for ICASA to finalize the process of satellite licensing. So whether it is Starlink, I mean, we can discuss the desirability of Starlink or any other, Eutelsat, any other satellite provider. We think that that is definitely what we need as part of the mix to ensure expanded access, especially to areas that are hard to reach or perhaps even expensive for the fiber companies to reach.
Yeah, and speaking about that ICASA process, has the Portfolio Committee heard at all from any of the license holders opposing that process that has been started by the minister? And here also speaking about the likes of Vodacom, MTN, the well-established companies that are already license holders.
Well, we've heard from the Association of Communication Technology, which represents the likes of Vodacom, MTN, Telkom, and so forth. And what we understand their position to be is that they would seek regulatory parity, which means that once those comments on the minister's policy directives have come in, they would want a level playing ground. And then the question becomes, what then does a level playing ground look like? The issue that some of us have taken up with them is to say we hope that a level playing ground in your case does not mean that you want to offload your black shareholders because you think you no longer have to comply with the 30% BEE, and that's some of the discussions. But I do understand part of their arguments where they're saying they've invested significant amounts of money into this country. Government has expected them to meet certain obligations in terms of connectivity, like I was saying, over and above what they do on their own. They've spoken to the fact that already, they had legacy obligations. Now they've got new spectrum conditions. And any player that comes into the market, they expect that government will hold them to account in a similar way. So issues of enterprise and supplier development, all the laws that apply and that they comply with in this country, any new entrants must be compelled to comply with those. So I think it's continuous engagement. I mean, the policy directive of the minister is out there for public comment, and South Africans, including the mobile network operators, will be making their comments in that regard, and we also continue to engage with them.
Yeah, and just finally, on that particular point, Chairperson, is what about the efficiency of the state to help the so-called license holders and network providers to make sure that they are able to commercialize whatever they are offering? And of course, here we're speaking about business, so profits are quite important. The delay, as an example, with the auctioning of the spectrum, how long it took us to get to that particular space. How do we ensure that government entities are agile enough because of the constant changes in technology and innovation in this space?
Yeah, Eldrin, that's a very, very critical question. And as much as we are inviting the MNOs because we've got questions for them, I think what we also want to do as a portfolio committee to let them speak and hear them talk to us about the challenges that they are confronting. I mean, it's an open secret that our legislation is outdated. It no longer responds to the realities of the time. Our policy and regulatory frameworks are outdated. They too are not helpful in a rapidly changing technological world. So we do want the MNOs to engage us on the challenges that they are facing. And what we're looking for is solutions. When you speak about a social compact, right, it can't just be about this is what we're going to do or this is what government expects, but we need to have these honest conversations where we're saying, but these are the problems, how do we resolve them as South Africans? Now, what we are doing as Parliament is creating that opportunity for that engagement. I mean, you mentioned the issue of a spectrum policy. It goes both ways. There were delays in terms of the auction, but now we're due for a next round of spectrum allocation. And my question is going to be, have we done an audit on the conditions that were set on the previous spectrum? What has happened with that spectrum before we go forward? But that needs joint planning, collaboration, and really government. And we have invited Minister Malatsi to this meeting, and I hope he will attend. We're hoping government is going to understand that for us to achieve our aspirations, it cannot be business as usual. All these silos, all these fiefdoms and kingdoms that people are building around their particular projects, it cannot be. South Africans expect better of us. And if we're going to really realize this universal, meaningful, accessible connectivity for all, which is the bedrock to economic activity, government is going to have to pull up its socks as well.
Thank you so much for your time. Khusela Diko is the Portfolio Committee Chairperson.